Welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, a conversation through the careers of writer Simon Furman and artist Andrew Wildman. Recollections and revelations about the highs and the lows as creatives in comics, books, games, film and TV. Here we are again then, Simon.
Here we are again. Here we are in the video only members section of
Yeah,
the podcast.
yeah, and access to our respective studios, offices, slash
Virtual
whatever.
backgrounds.
Virtual backgrounds, yeah. Mine's not virtual.
No.
It's
Yeah.
it's virtually tidy, but not
Yes.
really. Yeah, I added something new
Anyway.
to it. My little Starship Enterprise model just on the shelf there.
Oh, okay, right. I thought it was a finger. I thought you've
This
had
is a
a
finger
new finger.
just behind me there. Can you see
Yeah,
it?
yes. I can. Yeah.
And my Luther clapperboard.
Yes. I can indeed.
Yeah. What's your
So
week? What's your 2 weeks been like then, just for the Prime members?
good. I've been working on a bunch of different things really. Couple of new games in the offing, which I've been doing some preliminary work for, both
Okay.
Transformers games.
Wow.
Um, Couple of other bits and pieces, can't quite talk about yet. And otherwise, I've been working on Astrobots, and I have been working on Return to Skull Island, which is my new series for Titan. So
Cool.
yeah, been keeping busy and mostly just enjoying the good weather.
Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not quite there yet today. It was very cold though yesterday. It was very cold here,
Mm,
but warm in the sun. But
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, we've had the same thing, chilly breeze, but nice in the sun. But still, can't complain.
No, I had a hospital visit yesterday. I had to go to the
Oh,
hospital
blimey.
for the latest saga of the hand
Oh,
and the
yes, the finger.
yeah, I know what this is now. It's called Dupitrons.
Right.
Dupitron.
Wow.
I've got a
Yes.
Dupitron
It
finger.
it does sound like a Decepticon, doesn't it?
It's I don't know if they had anything to do with that, but I had to have this special kind of electro kind of test therapy thing on all the nerves in my wrist and my
Mm.
arm. That was weird. So they just basically stuck things onto me with wires on them to give me electric shocks. My hand was going,
Wow.
"Wait, wait."
Oh, well, sounds fun.
Oh, the woman doing it, she thoroughly enjoyed it.
Did you try a sort of James Bond style shocking?
I didn't. No,
Oh,
I
you
should have.
missed a chance.
James Bond is so last century.
So
I had
before
I
we
had a rumor that Chris Hemsworth is going to be James Bond.
what? Oh dear. It's a bit muscle bound for James Bond, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah,
Anyway, shall we talk about something?
something useful.
Yeah, well, I mean, do you want to talk about uh as a follow-up to our sort of last movie one? We had a couple of little catch-up bits for that. Are we going to
Yeah,
do
we
that
did.
in this segment?
Now we'll do that in the main segment.
Okay. Well, okay, then you can join us for that
Yeah,
very shortly. And trying to think what else has been going on.
what's been going on? Oh, I was approached by Skybound about this Kickstarter thing.
Oh, good. Yes, yeah.
They wanted me to not to do any work. They wanted me to answer three questions just as a kind of spotlight on Andrew Wildman kind of
Hmm.
thing. Send them a photograph of myself. I was like, okay, do I send them the photograph of me with a beard? Or do I take a new one of me without the beard? Or actually, probably more relevant, am I going to grow the beard back again? Because every time I have a shave in the morning, I just the way it's shredded, I have blood running down my face. So I might grow that back again. But anyway, yeah, three questions, and then they asked me to if I was up for signing some prints.
Okay, cool. Yeah, oh,
Um,
good.
and they pay me like $1 a signature or something. I don't know
That's
whether
right. Yeah,
is that
yeah.
standard. I've never
Yeah.
had to. I've never been paid like that before.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I did that for some trading cards recently, signed a bunch of them, and I'm doing some book plates for the Skybound Kickstarter.
Yeah, nice.
which I think starts. By the time you see this, it will already have started, but the Kickstarter goes live on the 9th of April, I believe.
Does it? So that's tomorrow then, yeah?
That's tomorrow, yes, except when you're listening to this, it
Oh
will
yeah.
be a few
Yeah,
days
well,
ago.
it's in the past.
Yes,
Woo!
in that weird time zone we live in here.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so that's launching, and yeah, that's kind of exciting and be fun to see. And I'm doing so. Apparently, there's going to be another set of trading cards, so there's lots of interesting peripheral stuff, if you like, going on.
Yeah. I like the way that Skybound have kind of slightly changed the way things are done. These Kickstarter things. I mean, I'm sure they've been done
Mm,
before by previous publishers, but it's just such a good idea to just ramp
yeah.
up all
Mm.
the hype and the expectation and
Well, they sell it.
exclusive.
Basically, it gives them two channels, the
Yeah.
Kickstarter channel and then the direct market, gets I think the volumes are coming out one at a time through the direct market, but the Kickstarter is for all four or something. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just a different way of doing it. You get a few extra bits and pieces thrown in, I guess.
Yeah. It's good. It's good,
Yeah.
good, good that it keeps going. One of the questions was why do you think Transformers has survived this long?
Wow. Yeah.
What is it
I always,
about Transformers? And I said, I know exactly what it is. So
okay,
got me
good. Yeah.
got on me soapbox and
I always say it's because the thing itself transforms. For
yeah,
each new era, it just changes a bit for whatever the sort of audience is. So
yeah,
I think it's got that inbuilt factor into it.
yeah. And its inherent narrative is a very pure concept, and it's just timeless. I mean, it
Yeah.
it can just go and go and go, and like you say, because it gets reinvented, you know, and it can be whatever it wants to be, but still with the same core kind of setup.
Yeah.
Good versus evil.
Indeed. So one other thing I could quickly mention here is I recently did a signing in, I think I might have mentioned this, I did a signing in the Bristol comic shop, Excelsior, with a bunch of other people.
Yeah,
And I was sat next to Cavan Scott, who used to be our editor, I believe, at one point
yeah,
on one thing or other. Atom, was it? Um, anyway,
yeah,
but Cavan, I've known for years, and
mm,
he said, "Oh, look, be on my Perfect Sunday blog," which he does. So he gets, people to go through a list of, questions about what would make the perfect Sunday movie, the perfect Sunday book, the perfect
yeah.
Sunday brunch. So I did one of those for him. So look out for that. It's called Perfect Sunday, and you'll find it wherever Cavan Scott calls home on the internet.
Yeah, probably on all the usual places like we all do,
Yeah,
everywhere. You're
exactly.
not on Blue Sky, are you?
I'm not. No, somehow three social media channels is enough for me. But
Yeah, I had I'm on Blue Sky. I got on really, really early with Blue Sky because I thought if I get onto a social media platform, because I came off of Twitter for all the reasons that people came off
yeah,
X long time ago. And I got onto Blue Sky thinking if I get on early, then I might get seen more. And I mean, it's all right. Didn't have that many followers. I don't know, whatever. And I've just launched a new GI Joe sketchbook campaign thing, which you may or may not have seen.
yes.
Um, and then all of a sudden, Nick Roche, bless him, he said, "Oh look, Andrew Wildman's on Blue Sky," and then he shared it, and suddenly, like, I tripled my number of followers.
Oh,
Nick Roche has got
excellent.
like 4,500 followers. It's like, oh my
Oh,
God, he knows how to work this machine.
yes. Yeah, I mean, I may join up at some point, but like I say, I have enough, to do keeping through the appetites of three social
I know.
media channels, sort of sated.
Mm. Yeah. No, and you do well. You do well with it. It's great. Good.
Right,
Right. Shall we
shall we do our
do our thing?
introductions? I think you're doing the honors this fortnight.
Yes, I am. Okay, right. Press the button. Actually, before I do that, for anybody who for our Prime members, they've probably been enjoying this, which because you don't watch this video, Simon, you haven't had the pleasure of this.
I haven't.
So when I say press, the reason I say press the button is because as soon as I or you say that, there's a sound effect that kicks in, and then we go
Okay,
into the introduction. So you need to have a look at
I'll
that.
have a look at it.
Okay, now I am actually going to press the button.
Right. Okay.
Welcome to episode 19 of
No.
The Rescue Giant Robots. I'm Andrew Wildman, artist on for comics, well known probably mostly for Transformers, done loads of other stuff. Also storyboard artist for TV and film.
And I'm Simon Furman, writer on, well, Transformers, almost from the very beginning and still involved with Transformers, but doing a bunch of other stuff as well, including Return to Skull Island and Astrobots.
Yeah. So here we are again. So today we're going to go back to our kind of timeline conversation. And we are, what are we now? 2006 to 2008. That was the note
Yeah,
you sent
roughly.
me.
We'll
Rough.
we'll see how far we get through there because when I look back, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about really kicked off in 2005. So it's around that time anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Um, that brought up a certain relevance to me, that timeline, because one of the things that I was going to talk about through that time of mine was it was kind of the genesis of what eventually became Horizon, my graphic novel that originally came out in 2016, eventually when I'd got it done. Um, but something I've done recently is I've chopped up Horizon, um, reformatted it and put it on an online platform called Webtoon, and a lot of people might be familiar with Webtoon. It's a originally a Korean platform. It's a bit like Tapas. It's an online comics reading platform. Um, and the way it operates is it works really well on handheld devices, so phones and tablets. And it scrolls, you scroll up,
Hmm.
so rather than reading like left to right, you're reading sort of top down as it scrolls up through the screen and you just manually scroll it. So it's an interesting way to
Hmm.
redesign a comics kind of layout and I've loved doing it. So
Good.
so there's about, I don't know, 5 chapters up there so far. Um,
Of
and
how many do you think it will be?
I have absolutely no idea because I'm having to find what makes a nice chapter because they need to be about sort of 40 panels long, and
Mhm.
sometimes to get the narrative to work you'll use a panel twice but maybe cut in on it. I've rewritten some of the dialogue just to get it to flow in that particular format.
Right.
um, but it's a fascinating thing to do a comic that works that way rather than the
Mm.
traditional way. um, so it's a great platform. I mean, there's a ton of manga stuff on there, obviously, but there is a lot of Western, some really great Western stuff. The first thing I read was a horror thing called Stagtown, and I just thought, wow, this is just so well put together, and that's what
Mm.
made me think, well, I'm going to do this. So anyway, that's up there for anyone who
Okay.
wants to have a look. Go to Webtoon and I don't know, search for Andrew Wildman. You might find you might find me on there. I'll stick a link in the notes anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny. I wonder whether we could look at doing To the Death through that platform as well, reformatting it yet again from, it's been digital, it's been print,
yeah,
and yeah, maybe we can look at doing it that way. I mean, I don't think, given that they're all sort of screen shaped
yeah,
originally, we did them all as screen shaped things. It would
yeah.
just be a matter of changing the scroll direction, I guess.
It could be. I mean, the thing that I found, because I'm going to put Oxygen up there at some point as well, but the thing that I found is that because it works well to be read on phones and the font sizes are best done to be able to read on a phone, it means that any sort of landscape shaped pictures, because it's quite narrow, you don't
Hmm.
get a lot. So anything square or tall works really, really well. So
Okay.
I've been kind of chopping into panels and
Mm.
show one bit of it and then another bit of it, and just putting the dialogue in so that it you still get the flow. But it's a very
Mhm.
different discipline. But it'd be interesting for you to have a look. You never
Yeah,
know.
I will do.
Mm.
Good. Now,
The other thing I just wanted,
yeah.
it's all about me this episode. No, it isn't. The other thing I wanted to mention was I've just launched a GI Joe sketchbook campaign. Um, many of you out there will have seen the Transformers sketchbook that I released a while back, which was originally done by people regularly commissioning sketches of their chosen Transformers character. And then eventually, when I'd got like 150 plus sketches, I thought, well, I'll collect them in a book, which I did, and I sell it at conventions. And so I'd had some commissions come in recently for GI Joe characters, because obviously I did a lot of work on the GI Joe comic for Marvel back in the
Mm.
day. So I'd had sketch commissions for that. I'd been sending them out, and I thought, maybe I could do the same thing. So I've just launched that, announced it on, um, the social media platforms, whatever, and starting to get people to sign up for that. So that'll be
Mm.
fun. That'll keep me busy.
Mm, good. Excellent. Yeah, well, while we're mentioning things, I should mention here as well, as we did in the members video preamble, that the Skybound Kickstarter for the collected, Marvel US and UK comic stuff, uh, has, by the time you see this, hear this, kicked off and is now live. So you can join the Kickstarter, you can jump on board, and there are all sorts of bonus extras, including some book plates that I'm going to be signing for that. And I think you've done a little Q&A for it, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. Literally just sent it in. They just emailed me a couple of days ago, so I've sent that in. Yeah, it's great. I love these Kickstarter things that they're doing.
Mm,
It's just such a great way for people to get great content
yeah.
and be involved in it. That feeling of involvement. Good.
Right. So
Um,
before
so
we kick
before we
in,
get,
yeah, yeah, we
go on, you
will
can go.
we will get to
We
2006 or
will. Yeah.
whatever at some point, but we were going to just do a little brief follow up on our last movie podcast, which we did.
Yes. Yeah. A couple of movies that we didn't mention them because we hadn't seen them, recent movies. One that I wanted to see, which I have now seen, and one I know, Simon, that you want to see that you've
Mm.
now seen. So fire away with your viewing
Well,
pleasure.
yeah, you'd seen A Real Pain, and I think you saw that at the cinema. I caught it on a streaming channel.
Yeah.
And we both thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was, a small, quiet, but perfectly constructed little film, really good. And and
Yeah.
and Kieran Culkin is just fabulous in it. I mean, so is Jesse Eisenberg as well, but he he downplays to give Kieran full reign, I think.
He does, yeah. I mean, written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg,
Mm,
and he plays Jesse Eisenberg
yes.
basically.
Yeah. And
But
I'm pretty sure.
Kieran Culkin does go through various layers of personality, and I think it's wonderfully done.
But I get the impression, having, sort of read a little bit about Kieran Culkin, that he, that kind of is him too, a lot
Yeah,
of that performance.
yeah, yeah. I kind of get that from what I've seen in other things.
Yeah.
What did you, without any spoilers here? I thought the way that it starts and the way that it ends, essentially, it kind of bookends the whole
Mhm.
experience. I thought was very telling of the character, how he presents himself, but who he actually is.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I think, yeah, in a nutshell, he is a person who, can't function very well with other people, but in the course of the movie, he's the one with all the personality in it, and all
Yeah,
the, empathy and the deep feelings. So yes,
yeah,
him just sitting, and it's not a big spoiler, in an airport departure lounge with people he doesn't know is sort of perfect, because he's interested in people.
yeah, yeah. I thought it was wonderful. And a real extrovert, I guess. He just feeds off it. He just needs needs that audience,
Yeah.
but it doesn't always. He doesn't necessarily manage his audience as such. He just does his thing, and it's
Mm.
it's just it's really good, really
Yeah.
really good. Very simple story, but there's some wonderful scenes in it.
Yeah. Definitely worth
Um,
checking out.
yes, it is thoroughly recommended. The film that I saw, which I'd wanted to see, was it won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature recently. A Latvian film by, I don't know how to pronounce this, so I'll just take a stab. Gins Zilbalodis. Gins
Wow.
Zilbalodis.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, right. It may not be pronounced like that. My apologies to Gintz. Um, I and the film is Flow, and it's absolutely beautiful. Just blew me away. The best animated film I'd seen recently was it called Wild Robot? I think
Mm.
that was beautifully animated, beautifully textured. Um, and I thought, man, it's going to have to go some distance to be, nicer than that. But it's fantastic. What
Mm.
makes it really good is the execution is perfect. The animation is so realistic. The characters are all animals,
Mm.
but as animals, not, kind of cartoon animals. They are, realistic animals. But the texturing is very sort of painterly, quite impressionistic in a way.
Mm.
Um, it's set in some kind of, they don't give any background, some kind of post-apocalyptic world where nature has taken over back again. So beautiful, lush woodlands and things. The sound design is perfect. The sound of the wind and the trees and the water and everything
Mm.
is dialed up quite loud. Um, the other thing about it is there's no dialogue. These are not talking animals. They are just
Mm.
animals being animals, which makes it an incredibly universal film because there's it's not language specific at
Mhm.
all. You get the communication from the sounds they make as animals do. Um, and also it's not age specific at all. Like anybody could watch it. Like young kids would just bathe in the kind of visual splendor of it and the fact that these really really beautifully animated animals. But for adults, I think the metaphor contained within it says so much about human nature in a very subtle way, but also very noticeable if you've got a keen eye for that kind of thing. So I would thoroughly recommend it. If you can see it on the big screen, absolutely do. And sit quite near the front because I mean, not too near, so it's like, giving you a fit or whatever, but just so you get the full spectacle of it. If you can see it, yeah, on a big screen, definitely do it. So thoroughly recommended.
Good. Well, I
Um,
shall check
that's
it out
Flow.
myself.
Hmm. Right then,
Good.
should we
Well,
jump in?
well, I think we should. I think
I
we've
think we should.
prevaricated enough. So yeah, I mean, I think last time, well, the last time before time we spoke, we were sort of talking about the beginning of the IDW era and things like Infiltration and Stormbringer and the beginning of the Spotlights. So all that was going on in 2005 into 2006.
Hmm.
And, the bit I wanted to sort of talk a bit about today was that another strand was going on. As we always say, it's the feast or famine model. It's
Yeah.
never a nice steady drip of work. It just all comes at once. And while I was helping, Chris Ryle set up the IDW verse,
Hmm.
a weird kind of thing happened. Marvel Online, marvel.com, I guess,
Yeah.
had started doing little reader polls, tick a box, which character would you like to see come back? So
Okay.
they would give 5 or 6 options of characters that had been on the shelf for a while, and you know the great internet would vote, and whichever one came top, they would get a shot in a series. One they had a few sort of compendium series running at the time.
Yeah.
And anyway, one of these polls had Death's Head in it, and
Oh.
and and Death's Head won. I mean, I would say I voted for Death's Head about 10 times. I don't think there was a sort of limit on how much you could vote. But anyway, he came out on top, which was rather nice, which gave me a sort of a chance to reach out to Marvel and say, hey, look, Death's Head, coming back. I'd love to do something on that. And they said, fine, okay, great. We like that idea. And I was stunned. I'm going to do some new Death's Head.
Yeah.
And obviously the the people had voted for the classic Death's Head.
Mm,
That's what they were voting for. I mean, it wasn't Death's Head 2, it was demonstrably Death's Head, the original.
mm.
And then Marvel turned around and said, yes, but we want to completely recreate him. I thought, oh,
Oh, no.
no. And we want him to look like this. Image appears in my email. And
Yeah.
it's this character they'd already created as part of the Planet Hulk crossover storyline. They were
Mm,
alien machine constructs, just a sort of general mass aggressor in that series. And I thought,
mm,
oh, why? Why can't it be the original Death's Head? And why does it have to be this not inspiring, sort of image?
mm.
So, yeah, sadly, that was what I was. It sounds terrible to say saddled with, but I felt a little put out that if the readers had voted for Death's Head, they weren't really getting Death's Head, and there was no
Yeah.
real connection to the original. They didn't want it connected. So, so in the end, I ended up writing this thing called Death's Head 3.0 that had zero connection to the original. It was just a new character. I tried to
Mm,
give it some personality and an interesting storyline, but you know, I was happy to be working for Marvel again, but
yeah.
in a way, it was just such a waste. It's, they voted for Death's Head, bring back Death's Head, and even at the very end of the series, I tried to set it up that, oh, look, there is a connection between these. It's just, you have to get to it. But
Mm,
they edited it out of my final script for it. It it ran in a thing called Amazing Fantasy, which was a kind of two character per book
yeah.
sort of compendium title. And it's fine. I enjoyed doing the work, but overall I was kind of disappointed that I
Mm.
didn't get to write the original Death's Head again, which would have been a joy.
It makes you wonder why they said yes to doing it.
It really does. I mean, I'd
It,
love to have known what those conversations were that said, yeah, we'll bring Death's Head back, but we're going to make it this character from over here.
yeah, so it's kind of Death's Head, but in name only. I
Yep.
mean, if you'd have said, "Oh, I've got this great idea for this character," it's kind of springing off of this image from a book that you've
Mm,
already done, and I mean, they'd have said no.
yeah. And I'm sure people picking it up thought, oh, Death's Head 3.0. Okay, it's got zero, like I say, zero connection to the original. So,
Mm,
anyway, that was a shame, but, I enjoyed the work. And as always, I give it my all in terms of, make it a good story, get people
yeah,
involved. But at the same time, sorry, I'm hogging the airwaves at the moment, but
that's all right. Go for it.
at the same time, bizarrely, I was contacted by an editor at Marvel called Andy Schmidt, who, of course,
Mhm.
we know well because we work with him at IDW. And I was contacted by Andy, and he reached out to me, you know, nothing to do with the Death's Head thing, to see whether I wanted to be a part of Annihilation, which was a big crossover event they were doing in their sort of cosmic themed books, Silver Surfer, etc.
Okay.
And they he offered me Ronan, which was Ronan the Accuser from Fantastic Four, I think originally a Kree kind of judge, jury, and executioner character.
Mm.
And I had no particular affinity with the character, but, very happy to be involved. And I ended up having the best time on this. It was a good crossover. Sometimes, crossover events can be a bit tricky because you're fitting in with a lot of other creators and story strands.
Yeah.
But the Annihilation series itself was devised and written by Keith Giffen, and Dan Abnett, I think, was doing one of the spin-off books, and it just had a kind of quite cohesive feel to it. And the Ronan series had to be connected to, but not, getting in the way of the main series. So
Mm.
I did, my own little spin on it, and I played Ronan a little bit like Judge Dredd.
Okay.
I just I just went full sort of, he's this sort of implacable, slightly unchanging character with all these other cosmic characters sort of whizzing around him in his orbit. And
Mm.
it went very well. And it was the first time I think I bought back Gamora
Mm-hmm.
before she was a Guardians of the Galaxy mainstay.
Mm.
And so, there's some cachet in the fact that Ronan and Gamora were back in the same sort of, shared space in Annihilation Ronan.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great fun, and I just had greatest fun going, oh, I'll use this cosmic character and this cosmic character.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It didn't lead to anything much more, but for a while again, I was working at Marvel.
Yeah. Did you manage to write Adam Warlock into it, or did he have his own book?
No, I think there were certain characters that either had their own connective bit of annihilation going on anyway,
Yeah.
or they were just slightly off limits because they were sort of involved. I mean, I think probably around this time, Adam Warlock was in Infinity Watch or some other sort
Right.
of cosmic book. So, no, I mean, there's a character called Glorian I used, and I'm sure there were some other, Tana Nile is another one. They were a little more peripheral, but in a way that's great because then you
Mm.
can sort of do that thing of building some character and story
Mm.
onto them.
Yeah. And were you provided with a list of characters that you could choose from, or was it all your research?
I think it was more, here's a list of characters you can't use because they're elsewhere in this story.
Right.
So then it was, okay, great. Well then, who else is there? And there's a wealth of kind of cosmic characters that have flitted
Yeah.
in and out of the likes of Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer. So
Mm.
yeah, I was able just to sort of, in a way, kind of again go back to things I'd read myself and
Mm.
go, oh great, I could use that character. That character always intrigued me a little bit, but
Mm.
maybe wasn't front and center. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really good little brief flurry of Marvel work again.
Good. But nothing else follow on from that.
No, strangely it didn't. I don't, you know, I don't know how soon after that Andy Schmidt left Marvel and
Of
moved
course.
to IDW. It can't have been that long because not that long after that I was working with him, at IDW. He was the
Mm.
editor of the Transformers line there.
Mm.
So yeah, I guess he left, but it's a shame. I would have happily done some more in that cosmic verse
Mm.
that they were setting up because it had a really nice, I mean, Dan and Andy, Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning went on to do their kind of really well-regarded run on Guardians of the Galaxy that I think
Mm.
the subsequent movies drew a lot from.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Good writing team. I mean, you're perfect for doing cosmic stuff, aren't you? I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was great. And I would have definitely done more, but it just didn't play out that way. And I was sort of super busy with IDW and other things going on at that time.
fair enough. Fair
So, I
enough.
mean, that was kind of me back then, and I think we were both working on things like Atom, was it? And um,
I don't know.
yeah, I mean, there was a lot of sort of British comic stuff going on as well at that time. I did some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stuff for
Mm.
one or other. I can't remember which, even some of them I'm a bit confused about which publishers they were as well.
Move around, don't they? Yeah.
And the other
Yeah.
thing that was sort of brewing up was that, and we'll talk a bit more about this maybe next time, around this time, the first of the Transformers movies was, you know, on the horizon, so to speak, just the
All
name check
right. Okay.
horizon again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a lot of other stuff sort of bubbling under. I'd had that weird phone call from Lorenzo di Bonaventura, the producer of the
Mm.
movies, wanting me to be involved in some kind of advisory consultant capacity.
Yeah.
And that went nowhere. I just assumed Michael Bay came on board, and that was the end of that. But there was a lot of exciting stuff going on around 2006 into 2007. And
Mm.
at that time, I moved from Chipping Norton to back to London, where I
Yeah.
was
You
more or
couldn't
less
stand the
from.
pace here, could you, Simon?
I
That's what it
couldn't,
was.
no, no, no. It was just exhausting, the chippy social scene. But no, we were just ready for a move back to the city, as I'm sure we will be again at some point. But I think both my wife and I are Londoners, and that's where we generally feel most comfortable and have to be once in a while.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good.
So yeah, a
Yeah.
lot going on. But
Yeah.
what about with you? What was work like for you around that time?
My kind of memories of that time are mostly kind of just memories of how difficult everything was. Work was not great, life was not going great at all sorts of chaotic kind of problems. So, but I couldn't remember what work I was doing, so I had to Google myself to try and find out what the hell I was doing in 2006. And some things came to mind, and I'd Google them, and it'd be like, no, that wasn't then. Oh, I thought it was. Anyway, I did come up with some stuff in the end. So we spoke before about BKN, the animation company that we'd both done some work for, and Legend of the Dragon and all that kind of thing. I had a second stint back at BKN around that time.
Okay.
Um, back in the London studio, and it was mostly different different staff. Dave Friedman, who had been there, the main guy, he was not there anymore. Um, but I was working on a project called Zorro Generation Z, or Generation
Okay.
Z, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it was like a cartoon reimagining of Zorro, and I really enjoyed that. So they brought me in as character designer, and there were a couple of other projects that I was working on. But what was really significant about my stint there for me was the people that I met. So a wonderful team of people that have been brought in, many of which had worked at Cosgrove Hall. So people will know
Hmm.
Cosgrove Hall animation for things like Duckula and Danger Mouse and all those kind of things. So guys that had worked on those projects came in. And there was a guy called Rick Mackin who was director on Generation Z, the Zorro thing, and he'd previously been director on the Batman animated TV series. So there's
Hmm.
a wonderful mix of people. Um, Stuart Evans, who I've worked with since on many, many things. I first met him there. Um, and he's gone on to do really fantastic things. And he interestingly did the more recent version of Danger Mouse. He was director on a lot of that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, the most interesting character there was a guy called Jeff Marsh, or Swampy as his nickname was. And at the point we were leaving, he was showing me his new little project that he'd come up with. I might have mentioned this before. his little project that him and his mate had come up with, and they'd done like a little voiceover, and he'd kind of animated some doodles, and that's all it was. And he was American, so he was going back to America because his little show had been picked up by Disney.
Mm.
Um, and that particular show in question was Phineas and Ferb, which became an absolute monster for Disney. It was
Mm.
just, so popular. So that completely remade his career. So it was an interesting time at BKN. The other thing for me that happened, the seed of something that happened when I was there was I'd got this idea for a kids, like a preschool character-based show that was the kind of context of which was cooking, and it was a character called Jeff the chef. And I remember showing it to Stuart Evans in the studio, saying, "I've got a meeting with the guy that runs the studio in London. It was a French-based production company, and they'd got an office. Um, and the writer that I was working with on this little seedling of an idea for a show had managed to get a meeting with this guy. And Stuart said to me, "Well, good luck with that. Nobody can get anything placed in animation, and you've only been working in this for like 6 months." Anyway, we went along to this meeting, and they optioned it. They-
Wow.
So I went back to the studio, and I said, Stuart said, "How'd it go then? How did your idea go? Everyone's got an idea. How did your idea go?" And I said, "Yeah, they optioned it." And he was like, "What? What? You're joking? That does not happen. That is impossible. That does not happen. You haven't been in this industry long enough. That is not possible. How did you get it done?" And I said, "I don't know. I guess because I haven't been in this industry very long, I didn't realize it wasn't possible." So the whole
Yeah.
attitude that I went in with was not one of immediate sort of self-defeat.
No.
Um, anyway, it was optioned by them for a while. They tried to place it with the BBC, didn't get placed, but a number of years later, it did show up on Channel 5 Milkshaker's Shane the Chef. So we
Mm.
made that show eventually. Um,
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. And did you got a second series out of it? I'm pretty sure,
no,
didn't you?
they're still
Oh,
trying to getting finance for animation is really difficult, and the animation industry itself has taken a massive downturn at the moment for various
mm,
reasons. A lot of people are just not working at the moment. Just not
mm.
enough going on. A number of companies have gone under, but it tends production tends to do that. It peaks for a while, and then it troughs again, and then so it will come back again. But it's just how long those guys can hang around waiting.
And
Directors, storyboard artists.
maybe again, it's about how the younger audience is receiving their hit of cartoons or something. Maybe it's more on your webtoons and whatever else. Maybe just
The
the whole model
yeah.
has changed.
The model has changed. I mean, one of the Stuart Evans, who I've worked with, he was, up until recently, he was working for Moonbug. Worked for them quite a long time. They're an animation company who their model was exactly that. I mean, they had a show, or probably still have a show on the BBC on CBeebies called Coco Melon. That's like a very, very young age group show. But they had a whole raft of short shows on YouTube, and
Mm.
they get millions of views. So like 3 minute shows. And I worked on some of those, something called Gecko's Garage, something called Arpo, just really, really fun little shows. A lot of them are designed too much with kind of, there's certain matrix as the business model boxes they have to tick, make sure this happens at this stage. So it's quite prescribed for the directors as to how to put the show together. Stuart was a bit of a maverick. He just liked making good fun shows, but um, so yeah, animation industry in a bit of a downturn at the moment, unfortunately.
Mm.
So
Very good.
season two of Shane the Chef probably not going to happen in a
Oh,
hurry.
that's a shame. On my side of things, one more thing I should probably mention that is nicely off the Transformers track, which we'll get back on maybe next time. Another sort of surprise left field approach was Dynamite Entertainment, who reached out and offered me Terminator.
Ah,
They had the Terminator license, and they wanted to uh, just basically continue. Weirdly, they had the licensed Terminator 2. It must have been one of these fractured licenses where
okay.
they could only say it's a sequel or a something to Terminator 2 and I think 3 Rise of the Machines or whatever it was called.
Right.
So we had to just make sure we weren't referencing the first film at all. But any otherwise, it was just here are all the Terminator characters, have some fun. And I did two series for them, two 5-issue series. The first one was Terminator Infinity, and the second one was Terminator Revolution, which
Hmm.
were both connected mini series, the same John Connor
Hmm.
storyline throughout. And that was just the most amazing fun. Suddenly I was writing Terminator. It's like when I got to write RoboCop for Marvel, it was just like, wow, I'm playing around with something that I saw and loved,
Yeah.
completely independent of any kind of comics work. And now I get to direct these characters for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoyed that whole experience. And again, yeah, I did two series for them. I don't think either they didn't have the license as an ongoing thing, or there just wasn't any more T2 stuff to be done. But again, really enjoyed it. And it hit this monumentally busy period for me where, it was there was the Marvel stuff, there was Terminator, and the sort of the early IDW era
Hmm.
work. So, yeah, the definite feast kind of layering of work at the time.
Yeah. Mine was more the kind of famine version.
Yes. Yeah. And, that's the way, it flip-flops, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that came out for me on that was after I finished working at BKN. I also just kind of getting back to the origin of Horizon. I was also doing a lot of work on personal development. So I was doing these kind of coaching programs just for
Mm.
my own, my own kind of benefit, but sort of learning more about that, which would eventually feed into a lot of things that I do, a lot of the lectures I do at universities and things. Um, Leslie, my wife, went to Africa for a month working on a charity project.
Mm.
It was like, it was just crazy. Kind of came out of the blue. Um, so I kind of had a month on my own where I could just like desperately try and work out what my career was going to be, but also work on some little personal projects as well.
Mm.
But then the other thing that happened for me in terms of work was um, I applied for a job, not a full-time job, but a contract job with a games company in Guildford, a studio called Knick Knack. Funny names these game studios have.
Yes.
And that turned out to be, I think it was a year, maybe 18 months, maybe a year contract with them, working mostly in-house in Guildford. So it was a bit of a journey to get there and back. But that was all environment and character design, and yeah, I loved it. And some of the work that I did there, I've still got all the original artwork for, and I do look at it and think, wow, I drew that. Blimey, I can do that now, which quite often happens.
Yes.
Um, so that was on the Ology World book, so Dragonology,
Mhm.
the Dragonology, Piratology, and Wizardology. It was great. I really, really enjoyed that. But at that same time, I'd also managed to get a gig drawing a comic strip with a writer called Jason Cobley, um, for a UK comic that had just come out, a weekly comic called the DFC, which eventually kind of morphed and became what is now the Phoenix, a very popular kind of kids comic, and it's like an anthology thing. And we did a strip called Frontier, the Weird Wild West. So it was like
Mm.
a Western thing and involved a lot of American folklore. And I love doing that as well. Slightly different art style for me, not radically different, but that was really good. And myself and Jason retained the rights to it, so we collected it all into like an album.
Mm.
Um, so that was a lot of fun. And it was then that I was first putting together the seeds of what would become Horizon.
Yeah.
I'd had various kind of thoughts around it, but one of the people that I worked with at Knick Knack was a young lady called Jo. She was like a production assistant slash runner slash did everything else that no one else could manage to do. She's great, a lot of energy, really talented. And there was something about her. She had the right kind of look for the main character in Horizon. So I said to her, "Look, this is going to sound really weird because you're a young woman and I'm a middle-aged guy. Can I take some photos of you?" She's like, "What?" So I
Yeah.
said, and I explained to her what the character was and that I was trying to do a graphic novel. And she said, "Yeah, I'd love to."
Okay.
She said, "What do you want me to wear?" So I said, "What I want you to decide." So I described the character to her and I said, "Wear what you think that character would wear." Um, so she did. She turned up, a few days later, dressed as she was, denim shorts, hoodie, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And that became the look of Alice Ann
Wow.
in Horizon. So,
Okay.
so she created that look. I got in touch with her recently and sort of thanked her again and said, "Hey, and now it's up on Webtoon."
Oh, cool.
She's carried on working in the games industry,
Mm.
but the book with that character was originally called Metalite, um, and then it kind of changed and morphed and whatever, and eventually became Horizon. So
Wow.
that was
That's
pretty much that period for me. Those 2 years with
mm.
those things.
Yeah, and I mean, it's things were weirdly about to kind of kick off even on another level with the Transformers movie because even though you know I wasn't involved in that through IDW, I was involved in a lot of stuff around the movie, and then we got the Titan kind of movie comic coming out as well. So we've
Yes.
got plenty of stuff we can talk about next time, and we'll take it back slightly onto the Transformers track.
Mm. Yeah. Good. Excellent. Okay. So there's a few things that I've mentioned there that I'll put links to in the show notes. If there's anything you want to chuck in there, Simon, let me know. Just ping me a
Okay.
message and I'll stick them in so
Yeah,
that
will
people can
do.
have a link to anything that we've mentioned there.
Well, I'll rattle off some blurb and stuff, and if I think of anything,
Yeah.
I'll drop in a link. But I don't think there's anything extremely current, although I might say, here's the Kickstarter link for
Yeah.
the Skybound thing, which they sent me over this morning.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Let's start doing that generally. Put stuff in
Yeah.
the show notes.
Okay, good. I will send anything like that over. Um, right, shall I stop the recording?
Well, you should say goodbye
Oh,
first.
yes, that's true. Yes. I forgot
You
about
got you
that
got
bit.
somewhere to go, Mister.
Well, actually, yes.
Well, me too. But yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Okay,
Um,
sorry, yes.
yeah, fantastic. Okay, that I enjoyed that. It was good. It's nice,
Yeah,
nice to go into some slightly different stuff. So, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. So, goodbye from me, and
it's goodbye from him.
okay. All right, guys. See you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to The Rest is Giant Robots. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing for more and maybe share with like-minded friends. This has been a Wildfire production.